reality in the Great Recession. As I look around the room, probably none of you are paying a whole hell of a lot of attention to the economy in 2008, were you? With that being 9 years ago.
Remember the house thing?
But a bunch of bankers and investment houses were playing fast and loose with good practice. For example, they had this neat thing called a no proof of income, no proof of asset loans. So I could march in, for example, to First National Chicago or Harris Trust and Savings Bank and say, if they had Nina mortgages, which they did, say, hey, I see that they have this nice 400-acre farm in Barrington Hills called Horizon Farms. It's advertised at $19 million. I would like a mortgage to cover my purchase of that. And the banker would say, well, what's your annual income? And I would say, without any clue whatsoever, well, my annual income, being a graduate of Northwestern University School of Law in 1974, my income is $600,000 a year. They don't require me to prove that. And my assets, I've got a stock portfolio of $5 million. Again, no proof of that. So since at that time, it's tightened up considerably, since at that time, your bonus as a lending officer was dependent upon how many of these mortgages you could write, not whether or not they were paid off. A lot of people were being granted loans that they had no basis or hope in hell ever paying back. Multiply that by several hundred thousands of people with several billions of dollars at risk. You see one reason, they were doing the same thing over on the stock side, with Lehman Brothers and so forth. You see why the economy was starting to fall apart, because the banking and the investment houses were all falling apart because they had made these really bad loans. So we had to move to deal with that, otherwise we'd be back in 1929, which is when the Great Crash or the Great Depression happened. So Congress had to move rapidly. It made some mistakes in writing up the Troubled Asset Relief Program, TARP. One big thing that they overlooked was they assumed a good intent on the part of the people, the companies receiving money from the federal government, because the federal government bailed out to the tune of billions of dollars most of the banks and many of the financial investment houses. The TARP was based on the idea that if we give a company a few $1 billion, they'll use that to get rid of the bad loans or to make new good loans to stimulate the economy. But there was no requirement, so what a lot of that money was used for was to pay bonuses to the corporate executives. So that was a mistake. Congress was hurrying. Congress, which they needed to, and so Congress made a mistake. It's like when somebody falls down, speaking purely hypothetically me, going into cardiac arrest, you know, you do the CPR. You know what the tune is that gives you the rhythm for the cardiac? Yes?
So, one of two things, you put staying alive or another one bites the dust, depending on your mood.
Okay, probably another one that bites the dust is not a good morale booster for the patient when the patient comes around. Yeah, but staying alive. Huh. Okay. Incidentally, the AED is between the bathrooms right next to the elevator if you ever need to use it. And it will talk you through the process.
The AED talks you through the process.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It presumes that you don't know what the hell is going on, which is good because most people don't know what the hell is going on. And it will talk you through the process of. Okay, for our listening audiences at home, we are reviewing once again one compression for every 2 breaths, or two compressions for every 1 breath. That's it.
CPR is
30
to 2.
30 to 2. 30 compressions to 2.
Oh, so 30 compressions to 2. Okay. So I understand we don't bond with mouth to mouth anymore, but if it's me doing it, okay, seriously. I'm old school. So, Congress needs to respond rapidly to a bunch of crises in the world, and most of the time, and I'll give you an example of speed and expertise in a second in the real world. Most of the time, Congress will create an agency designed to deal with a crisis in real time, like airplane crash. Expertise, Congress, a plurality, the largest fraction of Congress, before they got to Congress, were lawyers. That's the plurality, the largest plurality of pre-congressional occupations. Lawyers do not know how to do anything practical. If they, as individuals, know how to do something practical, it is because they had another job elsewhere before they became lawyers. The guy who used to be chair of our department was also a guy who had gotten a law degree. And he worked his way through law school and then grad school as an electrician. He had his electrician's union's card, but that's not because he's a lawyer. So lawyers don't know how to do anything. I mean, seriously, it was very sad at the law firm on Sundays. Incidentally, if you want to become a lawyer, you can look forward to working 7 days a week for the first 8 or 10 years that you're working for a law firm. Sundays were sad for us because the support staff justifiably took the day off, and we were thrown back on our own resources. And we discovered a whole variety of things. One, you have to place the document face down on the glass instead of face up on the glass in order to copy it. That's what you do. I never did figure out how to collate and staple until I got here, and I had to do it over here. Coffee, if you make coffee and they have prepackaged coffee, you're only supposed to use one of those envelopes per pot as opposed to 2 or 3, and so on. So members of Congress don't know how to do anything practical. I mean, there are a few, as we'll see when we get to appropriations, who have real life experience, but most of them don't know how to do anything. And acting in the real world requires that you know how to do something. So, combining expertise and speed, we have an instance drawn actually from real life of a young Navajo lad it was a sad occasion. He was with members of his cross-country team. He ran cross-country and distance for one of the universities in New Mexico. And he was going to his fiance's funeral. And he got so sick he could not breathe that rather than go to the funeral, they took him to the infirmary, which is what passes for a hospital on the reservation. And by midnight, he was dead. He had drowned in his own fluids. And his team member said, you know, his girlfriend had pretty much the same thing happen to her. She also was a distance runner. And you got to realize distance runners are the fittest people this side of Michael Phelps. She also had that rapid onset and development ending in her asphyxiation with her bodily fluids. And this disease starts to spread amongst the young people in New Mexico and the other 4 corners, Utah, Wyoming, and Arizona. And the disease is killing young people your age. Usually people my age or infants die of flu. That's why when we get our flu shots, being over 65, my wife and I both get the supercharged one because we're old, right? But this was counterintuitive, as they say in the trade. Young, strong, otherwise healthy people are dying rapidly. And it's spreading rapidly. So you've got a plague that's spreading. Who are you going to call? I knew that was going to happen. If it's not Ghostbusters, that sort of happens that.
The Contagion Special Storm.
CDC.
Yeah.
Say again?
CDC.
CDC, Center for Disease Control. Because they are experts in figuring out what causes an epidemic. And they've got so-called go teams. They actually have people on call in a team, and they got people who can plot the progress of the epidemic. They got people who can culture microbes. They have people who can investigate whether this is pollution of some sort or infestation of a fungus or a mold. And after less than a week, the CDC said this is antivirus. I know the name sounds like it's Native American, but it's actually Turkish. Antivirus was originally identified in the Ottoman Empire in the late 1800s. But that indicates that agencies, and they're usually referred to as a repository, you're being fancy here, a repository of expertise. That's where experts have jobs. Matter of fact, there is a theory that there are three basic depositories of expertise in any discipline. You have the agencies that are dealing with it, universities, and industry. The industry deals with whatever that is. So, in order to know what to do and to move rapidly, those are two reasons why Congress creates an agency and gives it power. Third reason, hot potato, in quotes, this is a colloquialism. Hot potato, Congress does not want to decide at all on the issue. Not Congress doesn't want to choose make the wrong choice. Congress does not want to choose at all on the issue. Because any choice that Congress makes will alienate a large number of voters. Now we have a perfect example of this, starting with the President, now moving to the Congress, with the Dreamers. If the Dreamers get some relief, then that's going to piss off the people who don't want immigrants. If the Dreamers do not get any relief, then they're shown the door within 5.5 months, which is the President's timeline, then that's going to piss off a whole bunch of people whose family extensions or friends are subject to being deportation because of the decision their parents made when they were children. Whatever choice you make, you're in trouble. So what Congress often will do in such an instance is to create an agency and let the agency take the blame. Let me illustrate. Back in the 80s, mid to late 80s, it dawned on people that we had a large number of military bases that we needed to shut down. A military base is basically a consumer of money, a huge consumer of money. And everybody agreed that some of these bases had to be closed down. Some of them were clearly outmoded. In the 70s, up through the 70s, we had north of Chicago, Fort Sheridan, which was originally built to supply the cavalry fighting the Plains Indians. Not a lot of call for that after 1890. Some bases were right next to each other. Literally, they had two shipyards right next to each other in Newport News, Virginia, independently operated. You only needed one. So everybody agreed as a general principle, we got to close down some of these $4,000 or $5,000 military bases in the abstract. But when it got down to closing my military base, that became a very touchy subject. Because a military base is a money faucet for the surrounding civilian economy. All right. Basically, a military base is populated by young people, your age and a little bit older. And in the military, these young people are, well, they're Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If I say that, do we know what I'm talking about? Food, okay, is that a no or a yes? No, okay. Maslow had this idea that there's this hierarchy of needs we pay attention to. And food, shelter, clothing are like, you really need that. Everybody agrees that. And then after that you move to sex, then after that you move to spiritual enrichment. I compress the analysis grotesquely, but we take care of the young people's, food, clothing, and housing at a military base. And we give them spending money on top of that. So lots of young people with lots of disposable income. Whoa. They may spend their disposable income in my electronics store buying video games. Or they might buy, I cannot understand this, I'm sorry, fidget spinners. I cannot for the life of me understand fidget spinners if one is not borderline autistic. Because I imagine it would have some sort of a calming effect. Yes, dear?
Well, actually, actually for autistic, fidget spinners aren't the best thing because normally you want like a stim toy and fidget spinners are a fidget toy, which is like slightly different. So fidgets are more helpful to people with ADHD or people with high anxiety. Stim toys, which are things like sensory objects, those are more helpful to people with autism.
Okay. I should probably buy myself a tennis ball or something, squeeze or a rubber ball. That's a stim toy.
A stress ball is usually thought of as a fidget, but I guess depending on what type of stress ball, it could be a stim toy. Stim toys that I've friends have are things like pretty stim toy, but like there's like different things, different like textures, different things like kind of pull on and need and like manipulate, like little things like that where they have like a texture, something that's like stimulating.
Okay.
I have a couple autistic friends. I also have friends with a lot of anxiety, and I have friends with ADHD. So.
Okay, well, I was gonna go with my second alternative, the hula hoop, but that's, I think, was before you guys were born.
I love the hula hoop.
Well, it was a big thing back in the day, like it made the cover of Life magazine. Or we could talk about, well, they had this thing, the same people who make Frisbees, made this thing called Eskimo yo-yos back in the day, which really are sort of like bolas, down in the plains, of South America. You whirl them around, you have two balls, you whirl them around, it was really neat. Or just yo-yos. They still have yo-yos for you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Still do tricks with the yo-yos?
Like walking the dog.
Rocking the baby, all that good stuff. Okay, so we all, I hope we can agree. I mean, there's some argument in favor of your stim toys and fidgets. But I think we can all agree that hula hoops are not terribly useful in and of themselves, nor are yo-yos, unless you're going to war in the Philippine jungles. Apparently they got their start as a weapon there. Or, speaking of weapons, boomerangs, or frisbees, you know, they're not inherently important, and people buy them. People buy clothing, which is interesting. So, you know, young people go out and they'll spend money, right? Yes, sir.
Did you just say the fact that we buy clothing is interesting?
I was thinking in terms of, shall we say, stylish clothing.
Oh.
Back in the day, when I was not your age, I was about 5 years older than you. We used to have rainbow-colored. You actually wore a blouse sort of like the old tie-dye blouses back in the day.
Oh, no trouble tie, sure.
Okay, well, that was a big fad back when I was a few years older than you. As were dashikis, which is interesting for a white boy to be wearing, but anyway. So, okay, I mean, not clothing per se, but shall we say outlandish clothing, or what adults would use are outlandish clothing. So, you know, we'll buy stuff which has no utility whatsoever but makes us feel good about ourselves. One of my colleagues was explaining about how her brother just bought himself, well, he said he needed a second car because his truck was going to die. So there was some discussion of why you need a second car. He said because his wife goes to visit her sister once a month. And come to find out, the second car that he's buying is a Jaguar. So I know exactly what's going through his head. You know, that's what we call second childhood or midlife crisis, I guess. All right, so you have thousands on each one of these bases, hundreds or thousands of young people who are buying stuff which they have no need for, and they can do that because they got disposable income. And it's before they have to buy diapers and stuff like that. So for the civilian surrounding civilian economy, you've got young people who spend money, in some cases exactly like drunken sailors, we're talking about Great Lakes, and they've got plenty of income to spend. So if you close down the base, that spigot of money disappears. So the natural reaction in the mid-'80s was, yeah, some of these bases got to be closed down somewhere, but don't close down mine. So what Congress did was it created something called the Military Base Closings Commission, which went around, three guys, went around and held hearings and prepared a hit list. Bases to close. And here in Illinois, for example, the hit list said that Chanute Field in the center of the state would be closed down, and that the Glenview Naval Air Station would be closed down. And that was, particularly Chanute Field, was made the civilian merchants in the center of the state, like at Ludlow, very unhappy, or Chanute for that matter. Very unhappy, because that meant all these young Air Force people were no longer going to be there to spend money. And when the Illinois delegation to Congress was faced with these merchants saying, look, you're cutting our throats economically, the Illinois senators and representatives could say, it's not our fault, it's the Evil Base Closing Commission, it's out of our hands. So this hot potato, sometimes Congress will create an agency and an exercise in plausible deniability. Blame the commission. Don't blame us. We didn't make the decision. We have no power over the decision once it is made. All right, so those are the three practical reasons. So those of you who have younger siblings will recognize hot potato, I think, right? Mackenzie, you blame your younger sister or brother?
Sister.
You blame your younger sister for a lot of stuff you do?
Not really.
Did you previously?
No.
Do we have any younger siblings in the room who think she's lying like a rock? Okay, yeah. You may be unaware of it, and I say this as the older brother. You may be unaware of it, but I assure you, your younger sister will remind you of the things you have done to her. Yea, verily, when you both are past 65. The fourth reason is theoretical. You know, we're in college. You probably should have some acquaintance with theory. National constituency was a reason for giving power to agencies that was put forth by Woodrow Wilson, who you may recall was a president of the United States during World War I. And he has an undeserved reputation as a flaming liberal, and he was one of the most racist, certainly in the 20th century, the most racist president we've had, including the current one. Woodrow Wilson was the first one to put white and colored signs in the national parks and the national post offices, for example. Wasn't real happy about women having the right to vote either. But Wilson, up until 2 years before he became president of the United States, was a professor of political science and also president of Princeton University. So Woodrow Wilson, the scholar, came up with the idea of the president as the only member of government who has a national constituency, the only member of government that we all have a chance to vote for or against. Think about it, that's true. You know, we're voting for representatives, we're voting within the district. If we're talking about a senator, we're voting within the state. The only office that everybody votes for or against is president, and vice president is who cares. So Wilson starts with this idea that the president is the only one accountable to the country as a whole. And he has a bunch of images about standing on a mountaintop seeing the entirety of the picture, stuff like that. So from this, in terms of creating an agency, Wilson develops a four-step, four-reason argument for creating an agency, or creating agencies and giving those agencies power, and it's based on fairness. This will be the only time in our acquaintance that you may use the word fair in an answer to my exams and not get yelled at. Normally, I don't care if it's fair or not, we worry about what is. But here we use the word fair, so embrace it. Alright, it's got 4 steps. First step, the decisions that agencies make affect all of us. Which is true, we've covered out over how the FCC regulates your wireless devices. And how the FDA regulates the food that you place into your body and the meds that you take if you take meds. Running with that meds thing, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, is charged with the job of, and we'll come back to this later on when we talk about enabling acts, is charged with the job of making sure we have safe and effective drugs. As I've told you, if a drug is safe, it is not effective. If it is effective, it is for damn sure not safe. So what the FDA does is it defines in particular context what a safe and effective drug is. It basically approves drugs for certain uses in certain amounts. So, multiply that by all of the activities. Earlier I asked the guys where their draft cards were. All the guys are supposed to register for the draft when they turn 18. It's not it used to be a serious problem if you didn't. And you used to have to carry your draft card with you at all times to prove you've registered for the draft. Now you don't have to. Which is probably a good thing. So these 4th branch agencies are in our lives, inextricably intertwined in our lives, and they are messing with our lives. Think of that as messing with our lives. Second step, first step, these agencies mess with our lives. Second step, it would be fair if we had a choice in choosing. These folks are going to come in and mess in our lives. Something that we are all, I suspect, at some point, going to experience, which I've alluded to from time to time in here already. You know, when you get married, you are inviting somebody into your life to mess with it. I mean, seriously, and you will not even think going into it how much, we've already talked about which side of the bed, right? You will not believe what takes on very urgent importance in your life until somebody messes with it. Toilet paper over, toilet paper under. Squeeze from the end of the toothpaste tube or from the middle.
I have siblings that trash my bathroom all the time, so.
Put the silverware in the appropriate slot in the silverware drawer or just throw it in any old way. Leave in plenty of time to get to your appointment, or leave at the last minute and just hope that all the lights turn in your favor and there's not a cop out there to stop you from speeding. You can tell which side of that equation I'm on. Well, are we reviewing whether or not we want to leave early or not? I'm a little bit more sensitive than the normal person in that respect, because my mother was late for the first 42 years of my life, and then I met my wife, and she's been late since then. Well, it's true. And you get a little sensitive about that. So you don't anticipate this being a problem. You know, when you have just made flipped the big switch on your Facebook status from single to in a relationship, which I understand from my granddaughters is a big deal. You know, you don't think, well, what is his view of leave the dishes in the sink to soak or wash them immediately? I can tell you what his view, I just a pronoun, I can tell you what his view is. You leave them in there soaking long enough, the dish fairy will come and get rid of them for you. But we, in our culture, we think it's fair to be able to choose our spouse, right? We expect to be able to say, yeah, I like this person, or, oh God, what was I thinking about? Britney Spears' first marriage would be an example of that latter. For those of you who don't know, she got drunk with a childhood friend in Vegas, and while apparently both were drunk in a blackout, they got married in Vegas. It was annulled after 96 hours. That was Britney Spears' first marriage. Or if you follow Friends, Ross and Rachel was pretty much echoing that. So we like to say, okay, I've decided to get married to this person, and I've decided that I'm going to spend $14,000 for a reception. There's going to be a party on one day, and I'm going to go to my fashion expert. Cecilia, I know, seriously, as near as I can ascertain, I asked my granddaughter, yes, you are a fashion expert. She explained it to me, and I don't understand the explanation. But how much does the average wedding dress go these days?
Anywhere between, like, new, probably like 3,000 to 7,000.
Okay, so yeah, I want to spend $3 to $7 grand, which is it's a semester's tuition down at Champaign now, I think. It's about a third a semester's tuition at Northwestern. But sure, I want to spend this on a dress because I want to look pretty. I want to spend $14,000. I'm getting the $14,000 from my niece's reception at the Concord, which I assure you caused some significant discussion in the not my brother's family portion of the family, because both my brother and his wife and me and my wife, we got married in our church, and we walked across the linoleum to the fellowship hall and had punch and cake, and that was our reception. So we talked a little bit about my brother's insanity in spending $14,000 for a party.
That's like normal. That's probably.
I know it's normal, that's scary to me. That's why my granddaughter didn't tell me how much she spent for her reception. You say, okay, I'm going to spend lots of money on this party for a day. And you feel like this person is worthy of this, right? As opposed to being told you're going to marry this person. Which is what other cultures do, but we don't accept that in this culture. We don't like to accept it. So, we think it would be fair if you have a choice in choosing these people going to mess with your life. So that's the second step. These people mess with our lives. Second step, it would be fair if we had a choice in choosing, and a voice in choosing them. Third step is that would be impossible. There are thousands of these damn agencies out there. I don't know who else in here lives in Cook County, but in Cook County we have something called the Judicial Retention Ballot. They've got 100 or plus names of people asking, shall this person stay as a judge in Cook County Circuit Court? I don't know who these people are, by and large. I vote for people that I was in law school with that I liked. I vote against people who have been condemned by all four of the bar associations, so it's hard to manage to do that. Otherwise, I just don't vote, because, well, we'll get to the 1982 gubernatorial primary later on, but bad things have happened when people have voted in ignorance in the past. Mrs. Newman has a theory involving Irish Catholic women that I don't fully understand, but it's apparently widespread enough. I actually saw a paper presented about it at IPSA about 10 years ago. Apparently, one of the best ways to be elected judge if you don't have name recognition is to be an Irish Catholic woman, or have an Irish Catholic name, marry an Irish Catholic boy, and be running for the bench in Cook County, because a lot of people vote for those folks. So, as a practical matter, if we assume that you should not vote on issues that people you don't know about, then it would be impossible for us all to vote for these thousands of people that are going to mess with our lives. So, step one, these folks mess with our lives. Step two, it would be fair if we had a choice in choosing them. Step three, that would be impossible. Fourth and final step, we do, however, vote for the president, who then appoints these folks. We don't choose the people to mess with our lives, we choose the chooser. And so that's Wilson's theoretical reason of national constituency for setting up agencies. Agencies have, one step removed, the national interest at heart, in theory. Again, this is theoretical. But I'm going to expose you to 2 theories total in this course, and this is one of the 2. And again, since it's the only time you get to use the word fair in my class, you might want to think about doing that. Okay. Second question on the second exam requires you to fully explain the what provisions have to be in an enabling act under the Constitution. So, as they say in the English department, deconstructing this question, we got three sub-questions to answer. What is an enabling act? What provision has to be in the enabling act? Why does the Constitution require such a provision? First sub-question, what is an enabling act? Let me pause before I get into the meat of the answer and tell you what it is not. Because your predecessors have Googled the phrase enabling act the night before the exam is due, or actually the morning of the exam is due. And an unhappy number of them come up with the fact, and it is true this label was applied to this particular statute, come up with the fact that the Enabling Act was a statute passed by the German legislature giving Adolf Hitler the power to take over Germany in 1933. While it is true that that was called an Enabling Act, does it seem likely that it should be brought into a U.S. national government course? No. Yet, and we can start a poll to see how many people are not paying attention to what I'm saying. Yet, between 10 and 15% of your predecessors over the last couple of years have brought the damn German Hitler statute here. Don't do that. It's bad. Second kind of enabling act that does not apply here is actually in the U.S. Government lexicon. So if you want to have a territory admitted as a state, Congress has to pass an enabling act that admits the territory as a state, as for example happened with Alaska in 1958 and Hawaii in 1959. But again, that doesn't apply to administrative agencies. So in our context here, an enabling act is a statute passed by Congress that gives the agency, and every agency has one, gives an agency form, structure, and a job to do. So it's like in the first chapter of Genesis, Congress leaning forward and saying, let there be an agency, and lo, there is an agency. And the agency shall have a single person at the head, as for example, the Environmental Protection Administrator. It shall have 3 commissioners at the head, as for example, the Federal Trade Commission. And it shall, as is the case with the Securities Exchange Commission, it shall regulate the trade of securities, which are stocks and bonds. Now, in giving the agency power and form, that's nice, but the important thing for the answer to this question is it gives the agency a job to do. And it is required that this enabling act have some limitation on the power to be exercised by each agency. The limitation is usually in the form of what job the agency is set up to do. If the FDA has power to deal with food and drugs, that means it does not have the power to deal with airplanes crashing in the sky. So the very nature of giving you a job over here would seem to exclude jobs far removed from that. We call this limiting action as a result of giving a job clear guidelines. Now, I'll tell you up front, this is also a code, folks. This is a colloquialism. The clear guidelines